Blazor interview question and answer. Now we go on a question number first. What is Blazor? Blazor is a free, open source, cross-platform web framework that allows to developers to build modern, scalable, and cross-platform web application using C# and .NET. Blazor, developed by Microsoft and the open source community, is initially designed to keep in mind C# and .NET developers who want to build web client application using C# language. Blazor is the modern, fast and rapid evolving. Most web application most web client application are written using JavaScript, where code mostly run in the browser. Blazor framework allows developer to create rich interactive UI using C# instead of JavaScript. Blazor supports both client-side and server-side coding. Both server-side and client-side app log into written in .NET, even though the code is written in .NET and C#. Blazor renders the UI as a HTML and CSS for the wide browser supporting, including mobile browser. Here is the example of Blazor code that shows how HTML and C# are in same file and how function can be cancelled from HTML code. There is a code which is HTML code with C# code. Blazor interact with the modern hosting platform such as a Docker. Now we are going to question number 2. Why use Blazor? Blazor is developed for developers who are not comfortable with JavaScript and mostly have a C# and .NET background. Blazor offers the following advantages: written code in C# instead of JavaScript, leverage the existing .NET ecosystem of .NET library, share app logic across server and client, benefit of .NET performance, reliability, security, stay productive with Visual Studio on Windows, Linux, Mac OS, build on common set of languages, framework and tools that are stable, features rich and easy to use. Now we go on question number 3. What type of apps we can build using Blazor? Blazor supports two types of apps: Blazor Server app, Blazor WebAssembly app. In the figure that show how to create a Blazor application. A Blazor Server app runs on the server side inside an ASP.NET Core app and handles user interaction over a single connection. Blazor WebAssembly runs in the browser on the client side via WebAssembly. Now we go on question number 4. What is the component in Blazor? Component is a fundamental concept on Blazor, and all Blazor apps are based on components. All UI elements in Blazor are components such as page, dialog, or data entry form. From a code perspective, component in Blazor are C# classes built into .NET assemblies that define UI, rendering logics, and handle control and page events. A Blazor component use the combination of Razor, HTML and C# code. A component is the base element of Blazor application. For example, every page is considered as a component in Blazor. Here is the simple client side Blazor app that shows default page component code: @page, h2 tag, @title tag, @function, and curly braces, const string title is equal to Blazor. In the above code, HTML and code behind are the same in the same HTML file. The HTML part of component contains razor syntax as well as HTML tag, and code behind the section contain that's actual logic. In short, in this method we can add view we can add view markup and logic of same page on the same pages. The logic is separate by using function block. In the function block we can define all the perspective that is used in view markup, and the method are bound with the control as an event. In Blazor we can also write component with the code behind, whereas C# code is written in the separate file. Question number 5. What are the Blazor lifecycle and Blazor lifecycle method? Blazor framework lifecycle method represent how various methods are executed when a Blazor application start, ends, and in between. Blazor use both synchronous and asynchronous lifecycle method. Override cycle method to perform additional operation on component during component initialization and rendering. This following diagram, the following diagram, the lifecycle event represent Blazor component lifecycle event, DOM, event processing, and render lifecycle method, how they are executed in the lifecycle of an application. Number 1. Component lifecycle event. If the component is rendering for the first time on a request, create the component instance, perform property injection, run set parameter and async call on initialize async. If the task is returned, the task is awaited and the component is rendered. If the task isn't returned, render the component. Question point 2. Call on parameter async. If a task is returned, the task awaited and then component is rendered. If the task isn't returned, under the component. Document object model, DOM, event processing. The event handler is run. If the task is returned, the task is awaited and then component is rendered. If the task isn't returned, then component is rendered. The render lifecycle. If this isn't it, the component first render or should render is evaluated as false. Don't perform the further operation on the component. Second, build the render tree difference and render the component. Await the DOM to update. Call on after render async. Render go to the first render or should is if no, then do nothing. If yes, build render 3 send render batch to DOM. Await DOM wait on after render async. The given figure. Question number 6. What is the Blazor assembly? Blazor assembly is the single page SPA. Blazor assembly is a single page app that is called SPA framework for building browser based web apps with .NET. The magic that runs a C# and .NET app inside the web browser is called as WebAssembly. It's called as WASM. Blazor assembly is based on the open web standard and work in all modern and browser without the need of any plugins or complication. Blazor web application and WebAssembly runs .NET code in the browser with the WebAssembly. WebAssembly uses JS interloop to generate and interact with the JavaScript in the browser. Technically, WebAssembly is a low-level assembly language runtime with the compact binary format that provides a way to run the code written in different high-level languages in the browser at the same speed as native. WebAssembly is efficient and fast, safe, open, debuggable, and part of the open web platform. Point 1. Efficient and fast. The WASM stake machine is designed to be encoded in a size and load time efficient binary format. WebAssembly aims to execute native speed by high taking advantage of common hardware app capabilities available on the wide range of platform. Safe. Point 2. Safe. WebAssembly describe a memory safe sandbox execution environment that may be even be implemented inside existing JavaScript virtual machine. When embedded in the WebAssembly will enforce the same origin and permission security policy of the browser. Point 2. Open and debuggable. WebAssembly is designed to be pretty printed in a textual format for debugging, testing, experimenting, optimizing, learning, teaching, and writing program by hand. The textual format will be used when viewing the source of WASM modules on the web. Point 4. Part of the open web platform. WebAssembly is the design to maintain the version-less features tested and backward compatible nature of the web. WebAssembly modules will be able to call into and out of the JavaScript context and access browser functionally through the same web API accessible from the JavaScript. WebAssembly is also support on web embedding. Question number 7. What is Blazor Server? Blazor Server or server-side Blazor runs on the web server inside the ASP.NET Core and separate business logic from the UI. The UI is developed as an ASP.NET Core app, and backend code is hosted on the Razor component on the server. UI update from the server to the client are handled over a single IR connection. Blazor Server runtime handles sending UI events from the browser onto the server, applying UI updates to the render component that are sent to be backed by the server. The connection used by the Blazor Server to communicate with the browser is also used to handle JavaScript interloop calls. Question number 8. What is the what platform does Blazor support? Blazor apps can be installed on run Windows, Linux, Macs, cloud, and web platform. Blazor support both client and server side application. Blazor server side application are developed by using ASP.NET Core. The client side and web application run in the browser on WebAssembly WASM. Blazor is used to develop Windows client application, web application, cloud native application, and native mobile apps. Blazor WebAssembly support the following browser and platform. Apple Safari includes iOS current, Google Chrome and include Android current. Microsoft is not support. Microsoft Internet Explorer so current supportable, and Mozilla Firefox also supported. Blazor support the browser and platform. Question number 9. What are the template component in Blazor? Blazor uses the Razor template engine that generates HTML and server to the web browser. We can mix HTML and C# syntax in the Razor template, and Razor template a Razor engine that compile all the template to generate HTML. Blazor uh, version 0.6.0 supports the template component. It is the component that accepts one or more UI templates as a parameter, and parameter can be used to be for content rendering. It allows us to write high level reusable component. Using templated component, we can write generic and most reusable component. We can create a template component by using one or more component parameters of type of render fragment or render fragment tag T. The render fragment is the part of UI which is rendered by the component. It may have parameters that are used to during render rendering of the component or while the render fragment is invoked. Question number 10? What is routing in Blazor? A route is a URL pattern, and routing is the pattern matching process, the monitor that requests and determine what to do with each request. Blazor Server app use ASP.NET Core endpoint routing using map browser hub extension method of endpoint routing. ASP.NET Core is starting to accept the incoming connection for the Blazor component. The Blazor client app providing the client side routing. The routing is configured into the Blazor client app in app.chhtml file. The Blazor client app tag router app assembly is equal to double colon double comma at the rate type of program dot assembly double comma close forward slash tag close. Blazor app. This is the code of the Blazor server app. Public void configure. The Blazor server app allows to set fallback route. It operates with low priority in routing matching. The fallback routing is only considered when other route is not matched. The fallback route is usually defined as underscore host dot chtml component. Question number 11. What is binding in Blazor? Data binding in What is data binding in Blazor in Blazor? Blazor support the following way of data binding: one-way data binding, two-way data binding, and third, event data binding. One-way data binding is also known as interpolation in other frameworks such as Angular. It is very simple to razor, and also it will be quite straightforward in one-way binding, and we need to pass property or variable name along with the along with at the rate name is the either the property or a variable. Here is the code. Two-way data binding is archived using the bind attribute. For example, enter your name, input tag type is equal to double comma text close double comma behind at the rate name forward slash tag close and break tag. Event binding is in Blazor is supported by using function name along with the at the rate button clicked. Here button click is the name function name. Question number 12. How to deploy Blazor app in Azure? We can use Visual 2019 to deploy web application to the cloud, Azure cloud. To publish the Blazor app on Azure, right click server project of your solution and click finish. It will be open the pick a publish target window. Select app service from the left menu, select create new radio button and click create profile. The next window will be ask you to log Azure account. If you are not logged in, once you logged in successful, create app service window will be open. The field of this window are pre-populated as per configured of your Azure account. However, you can change these value as per your requirement. Now question number 13, how to deploy Blazor app in iOS? We can use Visual Studio 2019 to easily deploy Blazor app on iOS. Question number 14, what is authorization in Blazor Server? Authorization is the process to validate that user has to right to access application resource. Authorization is the process to validate the user has to right to access the application resource. In the other words, it's help you to control user access to resource based on role, claims and policies. Blazor uses .NET Core authorization mechanism, and it can be achieved using attribute built in component and by defining the authorization rule. The authorization view is Blazor built-in component that able to show page component based on the user authentication. This component also support policy based on authorization and rule based authorization. This component is very useful when you want to show page content based on the role, policy or authentication status of the user. It is uses authentication state provider to know the user authentication state. This component provide authorized and not authorized render fragment. The authorized fragment rendered when user is authenticated or not or non-authorized fragment written when the user unauthenticated. Both the fragment accept other interactive component. Blazor support role-based, policy-based, claim-based authorization. What is the difference between Blazor Server and Blazor Assembly? Blazor offer two models to build application: Blazor Server and Blazor WebAssembly. Blazor Server app hosts Blazor component on the server and handle UI interaction over the real-time single R connections. As you can see above the images, ASP.NET Core is responsible for rendering Razor component and compile C# code on the server, and the rendered UI elements are sent back to the browser by using single R. Unlike Blazor Server, the Blazor WebAssembly app host component in the browser of the client side using WebAssembly runtime that is designed for .NET only. The runtime is responsible to converting .NET into browser element. All component and the rendering process all are handled in the client side browser. As you can see from the above diagram, the DOM is generated by Blazor. All Razor component and .NET code is hosted and executed by the client browser using .NET based assembly runtime. Question number 16, when should I use Blazor WebAssembly versus Blazor Server? Blazor WebAssembly is an option for C# and .NET developers who want to build a client-side browser app that runs in the browser without need for a server. Unlike Blazor Server, a Blazor WebAssembly app does not require as a server all code execute on the browser. Here are some of the use cases where you may not want to choose. You may want to choose Blazor WebAssembly over the Blazor Server. You should not have experience working with ASP.NET and server side. You do not want to go through managing deploying code on the server. You want to take advantage client browser, compute and memory and storage. You want to build real-time response and build a UI that update frequently. You want to build fast static website. You want to take advantage of modern technology such as a progressive web apps PWA to implement live notification, local browser storage and messages and server worker. You want to build a web application that can be completely work offline. Now question number 17, can I use both WebAssembly build to full stack app? Yes, you can. .NET and C# to write your backend or server code. Use Blazor WebAssembly for the front-end UI. Can I debug WebAssembly? Blazor WebAssembly? Yes, WebAssembly. Yes, Blazor WebAssembly can be debugged using the browser developer tool Chromium based browser Edge and Chrome. You can also debug your app using Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code by setting debug break and set up throughout the code. This Blazor interview series is now is over. So we will connect you with you in next interview question. From now. Thank you very much. Have a great day.